Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into shabby chic. We'll explore its history, its key elements, and figure out if it might be the perfect style for you.
It's fascinating. Shabby chic emerged as a response to that very formal 80s design.
So it wasn't all about shoulder pads and power suits. There was a design rebellion happening too.
Exactly. Our sources point to Britain as the birthplace, which makes sense given their love of antiques.
Right, that makes sense. But what exactly makes shabby chic unique? Is it more than just distressed furniture and a few floral cushions?
It's about creating a space that tells a story, a personal narrative.
Oh, so it's like each piece has a history, a past life.
Exactly. Think about those picture-perfect 80s interiors, all matching furniture sets and that almost sterile feeling. Shabby chic was a breath of fresh air, a way to break free from that rigidity.
So less showroom, more like stepping into a cozy cottage or a vintage storybook.
Yes, and imagine walking into a room bathed in soft colors. Creamy whites, maybe a touch of pastel, and those calming grays our sources mention.
I do love a good calming gray.
You might find a dresser, maybe painted a soft blue with a few chips and dings that hint at its age. And instead of matching nightstands, perhaps an antique table repurposed. Topped with fresh flowers, it's an artful mix.
I love that idea of repurposing, giving old pieces a new life.
Mm.
But our sources also mention the risk of shabby chic becoming just plain shabby. How do you avoid that?
That's the key challenge. It's about being selective, making sure every piece contributes to the overall story. Instead of covering every surface in florals, choose a few statement pieces, like maybe some throw pillows or a vintage tablecloth, just to add a touch.
So it's like curating a collection, editing it down to the essentials.
Exactly. You're aiming for a layered look, but with balance and harmony.
Our sources mention shabby chic being very forgiving. Does that mean I can put my disastrous DIY attempts to good use?
Absolutely. One of the beauties is that it welcomes imperfection. Think of it this way, those little imperfections, they actually enhance the charm.
So I don't need to be a master craftsman to achieve that look.
Not at all. A little sanding, some paint, maybe try techniques like dry brushing, it goes a long way.
So my dresser that ended up looking like a leopard print experiment.
Might be the perfect candidate for a shabby chic makeover. Remember, it's not about achieving flawlessness, it's about embracing those imperfections.
You know, that makes me think about something bigger than furniture. It's like shabby chic encourages us to embrace imperfection in ourselves.
Absolutely. It's a powerful concept. It reminds us that beauty can be found in the unexpected, in those flaws, in the things that make us unique.
So it's not just a design choice, it could be a whole mindset shift, especially for those who might be feeling overwhelmed by the need for everything to be perfect.
Exactly. Shabby Chic says it's okay to be perfectly imperfect. If you can appreciate a chipped teacup, why not embrace your own imperfections with the same kindness?
I love that. And speaking of being kind to ourselves, let's talk budget. Our sources say shabby chic can be pretty budget friendly.
It's one of its biggest appeals. Instead of buying new, you can hunt for treasures at flea markets, antique shops, you name it.
I do love a good treasure hunt. But while our sources highlight affordability, they also mention that authentic vintage can sometimes get pricey.
That's true. It's easy to get carried away, so set a budget beforehand and stick to it. Don't be afraid to walk away from a piece if it's beyond your means.
So know your limits. And maybe that's a good reminder for all areas of life, right? Don't feel pressured to keep up with the Joneses. Now let's talk evolution. How has shabby chic changed?
It's adapted to modern tastes while keeping its core principles. We see farmhouse-style influences, bringing in rustic woods, galvanized metal accents, a more streamlined aesthetic.
So a little less frilly, a bit more grounded, but still with that comfy, welcoming vibe.
Exactly, and there's a greater emphasis on sustainability. People are upcycling and choosing eco-friendly materials.
Love that. Our sources also note a preference for crisp whites and neutrals in modern shabby chic. So a bit of a shift from the pastels of the past.
That's right. It's all about finding that balance between vintage and modern.
So it's grown up, but it hasn't lost its charm. It's still about telling your story, right? Creating a space that reflects you.
Absolutely. It's a style that embraces the past while looking towards the future. That's what makes it so enduring. It's remarkable how shabby chic has managed to adapt over time. It blends so well with modern tastes while keeping that classic charm.
Right. And it's a refreshing change from the sleek, minimalist style we see so much of these days. Let's say someone is ready to jump into this world of distressed furniture and floral patterns. Where do they even begin?
Well, enthusiasm is always a great start. But maybe before hitting the antique shops, take a moment to think about your vision. Which rooms do you want to transform? What kind of feeling are you going for? A cozy cottage. Something a bit more elegant and romantic.
So it's not just about collecting random vintage pieces, there's some planning involved.
Exactly. Curating a collection, telling a story. This is where that collected over time aspect comes in. It's about slowly gathering pieces that speak to you, that have their own unique charm and history.
Our sources mention distressed furniture as a key part of shabby chic. But I'm not exactly a DIY expert. How do I get that perfectly imperfect look without, making it look like my furniture went through a tornado?
That's a common concern. But you don't need to be a master craftsman. It's all about those simple DIY techniques. Sanding, painting, maybe even some waxes or glazes. You can even find special paints that create that aged look without the need for hours of sanding.
Okay, so maybe I can skip the power sander for now. What about color palettes? Our sources talk about creamy whites, pastels, grays, that sort of thing. Are there other colors that work well with this style?
Those classic colors are definitely a good starting point, but you can explore other soft, muted tones too. Think about dusty blues, sage greens, even pale pinks. The key is to keep that sense of visual softness. Let those textures and vintage patterns shine.
And speaking of patterns, florals are a must-have for shabby chic, right? It's like they go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Florals bring that touch of romantic charm. But remember, balance is key. Just a few strategically placed floral pieces can make a big difference. Maybe some throw pillows, a tablecloth, that kind of thing. You don't want to overdo it.
It's like you're creating a focal point, something that draws the eye in. Our sources also stress avoiding clutter, which can be tricky when you're working with a style that loves lots of objects and textures. Any tips?
It's all about the art of editing. Less is often more, especially with shabby chic. Choose a few pieces you truly love, let them shine, don't be afraid to rearrange or even remove things that don't quite fit. It's about creating a curated look, not a cluttered one.
It's like those decluttering shows, but with a shabby chic twist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And talking about being mindful, our sources talk about incorporating sustainability into shabby chic. It's a big trend. How can our listeners embrace that?
Well, it's about considering the impact of your choices, isn't it?
Yeah.
Opting for vintage over new, repurposing old furniture instead of throwing it away, choosing those eco-friendly paints and fabrics.
Exactly. Giving things a new life, reducing waste. And the best part is, those sustainable choices usually fit perfectly with the shabby chic aesthetic. A win-win situation.
I love that. It's encouraging us to be more thoughtful, to appreciate the history and the craftsmanship of those older pieces. Now let's get real about the budget. We've mentioned that shabby chic can be budget-friendly, but can you really achieve that authentic look without spending a fortune?
Absolutely. The beauty of shabby chic is that it celebrates imperfection. You don't need expensive designer items or brand new everything. It's all about finding those hidden treasures. Flea markets, antique shops, even those online marketplaces. A little patience, a good eye, and you can go a long way.
It's like a treasure hunt for your home. And finding those special pieces, bringing them back to life, there's something so satisfying about that, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. It's the thrill of finding that diamond in the rough. And even if DIY isn't your thing, there are ways to embrace the style without those big projects.
Oh, do tell. What are some easy ways to get started for those who are just dipping their toes in?
Start small, swap out those plain white curtains for something lacy, add a vintage style throw to the sofa, hunt for some mismatched teacups and saucers at a thrift shop, display them on a shelf.
So it's about starting small and building up your confidence. And maybe realizing that it's okay to experiment, make mistakes, and embrace those imperfections.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for you and enjoying the journey. Now, we've talked a lot about furniture and colors, but let's shed some light on, well, lighting. What kind of lighting enhances a shabby chic space?
Okay, so we're not talking about those harsh overhead fluorescent lights that make everything feel so cold and sterile.
So definitely not. We're going for warmth, a soft, inviting ambiance. Think table lamps with fabric shades, chandeliers, maybe even string lights for a little whimsy.
Our sources mention vintage light fixtures as being important, but finding authentic pieces can be pricey, can't it?
Flea markets and antique shops are your best bet. And don't be shy about haggling. You can often find a great deal if you're willing to negotiate. Online marketplaces can also be good, but check those seller reviews and ask for detailed pictures before you commit.
And maybe get creative. Could you repurpose an old lantern or a vintage mason jar into a light?
Absolutely. Shabby chic is all about creativity and resourcefulness. See what unique solutions you can come up with. Now let's move on to textiles. They play a big role in creating that cozy, layered look. What kind of fabrics and patterns work best?
I'm thinking soft, romantic textures, linen, cotton, maybe lace. What about velvet? Does that have a place in shabby chic?
And velvet can definitely add a touch of luxury and warmth, like a velvet throw pillow or a velvet upholstered chair. But balance those richer textures with lighter fabrics like linen and cotton to keep it from feeling too heavy. And of course, there are the floral patterns.
Right. Those floral patterns are a staple. But can you branch out beyond florals? What other patterns work well?
Absolutely. Try toil with those intricate scenes for a classic look. Paisley can add a bohemian touch, or even a gingham check for a touch of rustic charm.
So it's about mixing those patterns, creating layers, almost like a visual tapestry, right?
Exactly. Shabby chic is about appealing to the senses, creating a space that's visually interesting, tactilely inviting, and emotionally comforting. Now, we touched on farmhouse style earlier, but how can we seamlessly blend those two aesthetics?
Right. Can we get that rustic yet romantic vibe?
It's about finding those common threads. Both styles embrace that relaxed, lived-in feel. Think rustic wood elements, maybe some reclaimed barn boards, or a farmhouse-style dining table.
So we're adding that warmth and grounded feel with the rustic elements, then the shabby chic touches bring in the softness.
Exactly. Aim for a harmonious balance. Try some galvanized metal accents, like a vintage watering can or some metal storage bins. That touch of industrial chic from the farmhouse style blends well with the vintage shabby chic vibe.
It's all about finding those pieces that speak to you, creating your own unique space, right?
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about a lot: furniture, colors, lighting, textiles. What else can we add to complete the shabby chic look?
Right. We've got the foundation, but we need those finishing touches. What role do accessories play?
Accessories are key. They add personality, charm, visual interest. Think vintage picture frames, ornate mirrors, delicate china, floral arrangements, even stacks of old books.
It's like those little details, the things that make the space feel lived in and loved.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to mix and match, group things in unexpected ways. It's about that organized chaos we talked about.
It's not about being too perfect or precise, is it? It's about letting your personality shine through. Now, what about wall decor?
Wall decor adds visual interest, texture, personality. You could incorporate some floral wallpaper, but nothing too overwhelming. Think about distressed paint techniques as well.
So is it time to pull out the sandpaper and chalk paint?
Not necessarily. There are paint techniques that create that aged look without all the sanding. You can even layer different colors, then gently sand to reveal the layers underneath.
It's about finding those techniques that work for you. What about artwork? What kind of art complements shabby chic?
Think about romantic landscapes, botanical prints, vintage portraits, maybe whimsical still lifes. Something nostalgic, romantic, complements that vintage feel.
Nothing too modern or abstract then.
Exactly. You want the artwork to blend in and create that cohesive, inviting atmosphere. Let's talk about one of my favorite parts of shabby chic: creating those cozy nooks and crannies.
Yes, those inviting little spots that just beg you to curl up with a book and a cup of tea.
Think plush armchairs, a comfy sofa, lots of blankets and pillows, and plenty of natural light. Layering those textures creates visual and tactile warmth.
And a fireplace if you're lucky enough to have one.
Absolutely. A fireplace is the ultimate symbol of warmth. Make it a focal point, arrange furniture around it, add candles, fresh flowers on the mantle. It's an invitation to relax and unwind.
And don't forget about the scent. A shabby chic space should smell as good as it looks.
You're right, scent creates atmosphere. Think about soft florals like lavender or rose, or warm, inviting scents like vanilla and cinnamon. Candles, diffusers, fresh flowers.
It's about creating a complete sensory experience.
Exactly. Shabby chic is about creating a space that feels nurturing, a retreat from the busyness of life. A space filled with beauty, comfort, and meaning.
Wow, this deep dive into shabby chic has been amazing. I'm feeling ready to redecorate.
It's been quite a journey. We've explored so much.
More than just furniture, right? We've been talking about embracing imperfection, personal stories. It's all about creating a space that feels genuine.
Yeah, I think that's what makes shabby chic so appealing. It's about finding beauty in those unexpected places, the chipped paint, those worn out fabrics.
It's so refreshing. It's like it gives us permission to let go of that need for everything to be perfect and shiny, you know?
That's a really important message, especially these days. Everywhere we look, it's all about that unattainable perfection.
It can make you feel like you're not enough, even in your own home.
Exactly. Shabby chic reminds us it's okay to have those rough edges, that our imperfections actually give us character.
Like how a piece of distressed furniture tells a story, right? Our imperfections tell our own stories, The good and the bad, all of it.
It's a good analogy, and that message goes way beyond just interior design.
I was just thinking that. So, for our listeners, how can they bring this shabby chic mindset into their lives, not just their homes?
That's a great question. Imagine approaching your work, relationships, even how you see yourself with that same shabby chic lens. Embracing those imperfections, celebrating what makes you unique.
Letting go of that need to control everything, letting things happen naturally, and enjoying the ride.
And most importantly, being kind to yourself. Accept those flaws, those quirks.
Because those are the things that make you, you.
Right. Just like that distressed furniture has its own unique charm, so do you.
I love that. So to wrap things up, as you go about your day today, try looking around with those shabby chic eyes.
Look for that beauty in those imperfections, the stories behind those objects.
Embrace that comfy charm, that perfectly imperfect life.
And remember, you don't have to be perfect.
Those imperfections are where the true beauty lies.
Embrace them, and you'll find that life becomes a bit more joyful, more genuine, and definitely more beautiful.
Thank you for joining us on this shabby chic journey. We hope you've been inspired.
And remember, embrace those imperfections. Create a space that feels like you.
Until next time, happy decorating and happy living.